Japanese tales, salt fish, and doctored wine. The governor of Ichizen, though he actually lived in Kyoto, Lord Fujiwara no Tamimori, failed to contribute his share of the rice stipend due to the palace guards. The six contingents of the guards responded by rising up as one man and marching to Lord Tamimori's residence, where they lined up shoulder to shoulder, seated on camp stools under awnings they had thoughtfully brought with them. They had the house blockaded and refused to let anyone in or out. It was the 6th moon, and the days were long and very hot. The guards had been there since early morning, and by midday they were roasting. But they managed to hang on by reminding themselves that they could not leave without satisfaction. When the gate opened a crack, and the senior retainer stuck his head out. "His Excellency the Governor has asked me to see you," the retainer announced. "He says he would like to meet you immediately, but unfortunately that is impossible because your presence has terribly frightened all the women and children. He does realize, though, that in this heat you must all be thirsty, and he thinks he might discuss things with you inside through a screen, as long as you don't mind coming in small parties. He suggests some refreshments. We might first have the left and right inner guards, if you have no objection. The other contingents can follow. His Excellency knows he ought to have you all come in at once, but unhappily his residence is too small and poor to allow that. So please be patient, the rest of you. Will the inner guards now be good enough to come in? His Excellency will receive you." The guards certainly were thirsty, and the thought of getting not only a drink, but a chance to say their piece pleased them very much. "How kind of him," they replied. "We'll be happy to go in and explain to him why we are here." "Fine," said the retainer, and opened the gate. The men of the left and right inner guards quickly gathered before it. Long mats had been laid out in the gallery north of the middle gate, and on them stood several dozen individual tables arranged facing each other in 2 rows. The tables were piled high with sliced sea beam, dried and well salted, slices of very salty-looking salt salmon, salted horse mackerel, and sea beam pickled in miso. For fruit, there were 10 great lacquered bowls heaped with nicely ripened purple plums. "This way, please," cried the retainer. "Just the inner guards now, if you don't mind." In they trooped. Kanatoki from Owa Province and Atsusuki from Shimos first, followed by all the oldest and most senior officers. "The other contingents will all have their turn," called the retainer to those left outside, then locked the gate behind him and kept the key. The retainer pressed the guards politely to step into the gallery and take their seats, which they did. When they were all in place, in twin rows, the retainer called for wine. In fact, though, the wine was slow to appear, and in the meantime the hungry guards quickly picked up their chopsticks and helped themselves to the victuals. "What can have happened to the wine?" the retainer kept muttering, but still it did not come. At last it was announced that although the governor did so much want to meet the guards, he was just now suffering from a bout of some stomach ailment and could not be with them quite yet. He would be out when they had finished their refreshments. Finally the wine came. 2 young men brought in a pair of big cups on trays and set them down before Kanatoki and Atsuyoki, who were opposite each other. With generous ladles, they then filled their cups full. Kanatoki and Atsuyoki picked them up and drank greedily till wine dribbled down their chins. The wine was a bit cloudy and sour, but having broiled so long in the sun, the men had a powerful thirst, and they kept pouring it down. In fact, their cups had to be filled twice before they would pass them on to the next in line. Turn by turn, the men all drank their fill, which, parched as they were, was for some as many as 5 cups. Next they had the plums, and soon the wine was back again and kept coming around, with plums in between, until everyone had wet his whistle 6 times. Only now did the governor emerge and seat himself on the other side of the blinds, which screened the galley from the interior of the house. "Ah, gentlemen," he began, "I never imagined that any failure of generosity on my part would set you against me this way, and hold me up to shame before all the world. There's been a drought in my province ever since last year, you see, and we've taken in nothing at all. At least, the tiny amount we did harvest was claimed quite persuasively by their excellencies at court. They took everything, I'm afraid. There's not a grain left. My own household is out of food, and the serving girls are going hungry. Well, I suppose I deserved it. But, gentlemen, please understand that I can't offer you a single miserable potful of rice. It's this awful karma of mine that kept me for years from any official appointment, and that now has gotten me a hopeless province so poor that it yields me nothing but embarrassment. I certainly don't blame you for anything, I assure you. No, I'm only getting what was coming to me, the governor sobbed aloud. Kanatoki and Atsuyuki assured him that they quite understood his predicament, but they reminded him too that they did not represent only themselves. We have nothing at the guard's headquarters either, they went on, and the men are very unhappy. That's all why we're here. The problem affects us all. Naturally, we feel for you, sir, and we're sorry to press you like this, but at the same time, we certainly wouldn't have come if we hadn't had a very good reason. Their stomachs rumbled shamelessly as they spoke, which was practically embarrassing since they were so close to the governor. For a time, some tried covering the squawks and gurgles by tapping their formal batons against the tables, while others tried different dodges to distract themselves attention from the problem. But the governor behind his blind could hear their bowels were in loud rebellion all down the line, and could see perfectly well that the men were doubling up with cramps. Excuse me a moment, exclaimed Kanatoki, and he bolted out. Everyone else leaped up and pelted helter-skelter after him. Some cut loose right on the edge of the gallery, even as they were jumping off. Some made it to the carriage house and burst before they got their trousers off. Others got their trousers off and squirted like nozzles. Then there were those who did not even look for a place to hide, but shat, obvious to all else, wherever they happened to be. All the while they were laughing their heads off. I knew the old boy would pull something, they chortled. No, we've got no complaint. It's our own fault. We were too greedy for that wine. And laughing still, bellyache and all, they shat on in chorus. Meanwhile, the retainer opened the gate again. Very well, he announced. You gentlemen may leave. Could we have the next contingent, please? Oh, yes, the men chuckled as they left. By all means, get him in here and treat him to a good shit the way you did us. They were wiping at their filthy trousers as they emerged. The men of the 4 contingents burst into laughter at the sight and fled. It had gone exactly as Lord Tomomori had planned. The day was good and hot, and he would let them stew for hours under their awnings, then bring them in parched, stuff their empty stomachs with salt fish and plums, and wash it all down for them with plenty of sour, cloudy wine. Wine liberally fortified with that trusty medicine for innards in need of encouragement, ground morning glory seeds. Oh yes, those rascals would shit all right. Actually, Lord Tomomori was a cagey old scamp and a whiz at making people laugh. This was just his sort of thing. The whole court enjoyed the incident hugely. The guards had picked a slippery fellow to tangle with. Perhaps the guards learned their lesson too, because they never again descended on a provincial governor who failed to make his contribution. Tomomori was very clever to catch them out the way he did. He could never have gotten rid of them by main force.